Hello, friends, and welcome to Lake Forest Online Devotion. My name is Beverly, and I'll be sharing today's passage with us. Today's reading comes from Luke chapter 6, verses 1 through 11, and I'm reading from the ESV version. On a Sabbath, while he was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked and ate some heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath?" And Jesus answered them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, he and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those with him? And he said to them, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." On another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they might find a reason to accuse him. But he knew their thoughts, and he said to the man with the withered hand, "Come and stand here." And he rose and stood there. And Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to destroy it?" And after looking around at them, all he said to them, "Stretch out your hand." And he did so, and his hand was restored. But they were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. It looks like here we have two different stories, both about the Sabbath and both involving the Pharisees. So I figured Luke probably intentionally did that so that we could kind of really study this and see what was going on in these two passages. So in the first story, I imagine this is, so they're outside and I see Jesus and the disciples. It seems like they're kind of minding their own business. Yet the Pharisees were there just following them, like were they just spying on them? And then in the second story, they were in the synagogue. So obviously Pharisees were there, but they weren't there with good intentions. Verse 8 says, he knew their thoughts and they were trying to accuse him. So the Pharisees were caught up in the letter of the law regarding the Sabbath, and they were even adding their own interpretations and do's and don'ts to it. And Jesus, when he asked them about the spirit and the intent of the Sabbath laws. When he said, "I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to destroy it?" Jesus obviously chose to do good in both these circumstances. So as I reflected on this, I thought how often I can be like a Pharisee, just focusing on do this or don't do this. But really, I need to check my motives. God knows my thoughts. He knows why I do things. And then look at the end, to the Pharisees' reaction. It says they were filled with fury. Here was an amazing miracle. A man's life was changed. I'm sure for this man it was the happiest day of his life, but the Pharisees didn't see it that way. They didn't see the miracle at all. They only saw their own jealousy and anger towards Jesus. So that made me think again, have I missed seeing God's miracles in my life? Do I just overlook his goodness, his protection, and maybe even his healing of me? So I know we tend to focus a lot on the Pharisees and what they did or didn't do well, but it just made me think that sometimes I think my reaction to things can be maybe a little bit like a Pharisee. And so I just pray that through this passage and today that my motives are right. I look around, I look for God's miracles, and I'm just have the right spirit for what Jesus wants to do in my life. I want to just close this in prayer. God, thank you for loving us. Thank you for setting your story in the Bible so that we can read it again and again and learn from it. Father, I just pray that you would be with me, be with us as we go about our day, as we look at what are our motives for doing things, and help us to be mindful of what's going on around us and the miracles that you really are working around us, and help us to be thankful for that. We pray all this in your name. Amen. Well, that's a little bit from my journal study today. Why don't you take a moment to reflect in your journal? How might God be speaking to you today? I hope you have a great day.